a regime that could not survive without force at home or raids abroad. That is the story of apartheid South Africa in its final years. A state built on racial engineering, sustained by collective punishment, and stabilized, albeit briefly, by terrorizing its neighbors. Its end was violent because its foundations were brittle. Apartheid was codified after the National Party's 1948 victory as a project of permanent white minority rule. A series of legislations like the 1950 Population Registration Act, the 1950 Group Areas Act, and the 1959 Bantu Self-Government Act classified every person by race, partitioned cities, and pushed the black majority into fragmented homelands on roughly 13% of the land. Schools, housing, hospitals, transport, and public amenities were segregated and structured to favor whites. For those classified as non-white, about 90% of the population, citizenship was stripped and replaced with Bantustan nationality. Everyday life was engineered to keep black South Africans just above destitution, with inferior services and constant past checks. Protest was criminalized. Beatings, mass arrests, and episodic massacres enforced the racial order. Apartheid South Africa's brutality was not limited to its borders. Pretoria repeatedly violated the sovereignty of Angola, Mozambique, Botswana, Lesotho, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. It mounted ground invasions and a sustained pattern of commando raids, bombings, and assassinations across southern Africa. For example, in Angola, South Africa launched a full-scale invasion of southern Angola to prevent the anti-colonial and anti-apartheid MPLA party from coming to power, plunging the country into a civil war that killed at least 500,000 Angolans. One of many single attacks on Angola was the Kasinga massacre in May 1978, where the South African Defense Force attacked a refugee camp, killing over 600 people. And in Mozambique, South African units carried multiple deadly incursions as well, where cross-border commando hits in Mozambique targeted African National Congress, ANC, exiles, and even Mozambican officials deemed supportive of the ANC. Pretoria also turned Mozambique's territory into a battleground, prolonging its civil war by sponsoring proxies. It armed and supplied Renamo, an insurgency that systematically targeted civilians, razing villages and clinics. The human toll of the Mozambican civil war was catastrophic, about 1 million killed and millions displaced. In Lesotho, the apartheid regime regularly staged nighttime surprise attacks, eventually triggering a coup that installed a more pro-Pretoria government in the enclave. South Africa also repeatedly raided Botswana. In June 1985, apartheid troops stormed Gaborone, Botswana's capital, killing 12, including a 6-year-old girl. They also regularly raided border villages. Meanwhile, the apartheid regime assassinated ANC representatives by parcel and car bombs in Lusaka, Zambia, and Harare in Zimbabwe. More so, in 1986, while a Commonwealth mediation mission was in South Africa, Pretoria launched near-simultaneous strikes on Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe as a show of force. Beyond conventional incursions, Pretoria ran an assassination program across the region. The 1981 Matura raid near Maputo in Mozambique killed 12. In 1982, a raid on Lesotho's capital, Maseru, killed 42 people. Even European capitals were not immune. ANC offices were bombed in London in 1982 and Stockholm in 1986. Apartheid South Africa assumed the role of hegemon in southern Africa, and its regional dominance rested on economic leverage and military superiority. Landlocked neighbors depended on South African ports, railways, electricity, and mine jobs, dependencies Pretoria exploited to mute criticism. Simultaneously, its forces and arms industry made it the region's military heavyweight. To formalize influence, P.W. Botha, former Prime Minister of South Africa, proposed CONSAS, the Constellation of Southern African States, to align dependent states under Pretoria's leadership. The frontline states responded by building the SADCC in 1980 to reduce dependence. As South Africa's actions made it more and more isolated, it is no surprise that it found a friend in another ethno-fascist state, Israel. Despite UN embargoes, Pretoria cultivated one of its closest military relationships with Israel. From the mid-1970s, Israel supplied weapons and technology to the apartheid regime. Cooperation extended to artillery, missiles, and training. A UN estimate in 1984 put Israel as South Africa's second largest arms supplier after France. There is also evidence of nuclear collaboration, where multiple sources indicate that Israel provided expertise and possibly key components to South Africa's nuclear effort. 1975 documents revealed that Shimon Peres discussed selling nuclear-capable Jericho missiles to P.W. Botha's government. On the global stage, apartheid South Africa posited itself as a Western anti-communist nation, and throughout the Cold War, key Western governments balanced rhetoric against apartheid with strategic and economic ties via mining, banking, and shipping routes, which produced decades of constructive engagement. These Western nations criticized the apartheid regime while sustaining it. The US and UK often resisted sanctions in the 1960s and 1970s. US President Reagan even vetoed sanctions before Congress overrode him in 1986. By the mid-1980s, public pressure, divestment campaigns, and banking retrenchment, notably a 1985 debt rollover crisis, forced policy shifts. Sport bans, cultural and academic boycotts, and the mandatory UN arms embargo in 1977 solidified South Africa's position as a pariah state. By the late 1980s, Pretoria had few reliable partners left and faced a legitimacy crisis. If we are to learn anything from the South African example, it is that systems that depend on propaganda, external sponsorship, and continuous exceptionalism are fragile. They appear formidable, but their margin for error shrinks as complexity rises. Over time, dispossession at home, militarized borders, foreign patrons, and a final frantic reliance on manufactured chaos signals brittleness, not strength. History shows that when legitimacy collapses and isolation widens, even a powerful security entity must reckon with the costs of maintaining the unmaintainable. And I'm not talking here about South Africa.